Hello again guys, and welcome back, and thank you for tuning in today. Now this particular video is an update on a project of mine that I set myself probably the best part of 2 years ago, and that is the idea of writing a book covering all the fighting styles that I've learned over the years and all the fighting styles that I've studied, especially focusing on pugilism. Now I do have quite a successful series on this channel where I describe and talk about and present pugilism, which is essentially the origin of modern day boxing. Ultimately, it's bare knuckle boxing, but it's a little bit more than that because, of course, there's not just punches, but there are some kicks, there's certainly a lot of throws, and there are a lot of dirty fighting moves involved also. Now, the reason why I wanted to cover this is something that I am actually passionate about. Something that I have a reasonable degree of knowledge about. I have a family history in it. My grandfather was a bare knuckle fighter himself. He fought for the circus as a booth fighter. So it's something that I not only have sort of academic knowledge of, but a personal experience, well, not personal experience, a third person experience through, as I say, a family member. Now, the book that I'm going to write, as I say, is going to be done in a sort of old-fashioned style, focusing on being a training manual first and foremost. So the whole idea of this book will be to teach you the basics, at the very least, of how to fight and defend yourself. Ultimately, it will be a self-defense training manual, but I want there to be much more to it than just that. I'd want it to be much more than just simply do this, do that, follow picture A, moving on to picture B, and this is how you perform such and such a move. I find that can be somewhat dry, but also I feel it doesn't do the heritage of these fighting styles justice. I want to include within it history. I want to include within it fighting profiles of fighters long forgotten, ultimately certainly within the mainstream. So what I want to do in this video today is, as I say, I started this project a couple of years ago, but I became very lost. I couldn't see the wood through the trees, so to speak. I started writing the book and I got obsessed with the details of doing it sort of page by page, exactly how it would read. So starting with my introduction, starting with, all the rest of it, and writing paragraph after paragraph. And it just seemed like something that would never be completed. And ultimately, because I didn't have a sort of scope of where I wanted to go, a grand picture of the sort of where what I wanted to achieve within the book as a whole, as I say, it was easy to become lost and demoralized, really, because it feels like such a huge project to undertake, and because I am passionate about the end quality of it as well, I do want to make sure that I do the book as much justice as I can give. Now, I'm not a professional writer in any way. I haven't had any training or experience in doing this, and I've not been taught how to write books like everyone else. I've been to school, but they don't really prepare you for this kind of experience. But as I say, I will be putting my heart and soul into this, and I want to make it as good as possible. So on top of that, I also want this to be an almost quite unique experience for not only myself, but for you guys as well. In that, as I go about writing the book, I want you guys to be somewhat involved, if you choose to, that is. Now, what I mean by this is I will be, as I'm writing the book, creating videos that go alongside that writing. In fact, the videos that I produce here will often be the foundation to certain chapters within the book. Okay, they will also be additional free footage that will go with the book, and they can be referenced within the book, showing you how certain moves are done. So as I say, I don't want the manual to be do this, do that, follow A to B, and this is how you get the end result, because I find that sometimes it's very easy to get lost in the words and not understand what you're doing. And also it can, as I say, be very boring. Whereas if I do videos showing each and every move, or at least the majority of the moves that I'm describing in the book, then it's a full and complete learning experience, and it'd be fun to do. And as I say, it will give you a sort of insight of what's going to be included in the book, because of course I'll be releasing the videos intermittently over it's probably going to take me a good couple of years to write this book, guys, but it will allow me to release essentially footage or content that will be in the book intermittently over those 2 years without you having to just wait around and go, is it done yet? Is it ready? Because I know there are a lot of passionate guys on here who have been asking questions, how's the book writing going? Well, here's the answer, guys. It's not been going well up to now, but I've finally worked out exactly, as I say, exactly what I want to do and achieve. Now, that's what I want to go over now is essentially the structure of the book regards the actual kind of moves, so to speak, themselves, the techniques, and the sort of rough order on how I'm going to do that. So I've finally created a written plan of exactly what I want to do. It's already 260 words, even though it's just basic bullet points, 3 pages of A4, literally describing, just brief detail, exactly what I want to include. So you can see it's going to be quite a large book, and this is not everything I want to include. As I say, I do want to include the history behind it also. In fact, just speaking about that, I think one thing I would like to do is also include the history of my father's father, as I say, the booth fighter, the bare knuckle fighter, who was, as I say, partly the inspiration for this book. And if I can include his fight history and some of the details of himself, maybe some photographs, that would be lovely for me, at least, to include. And I'm hoping it would be of interest to you guys also. Anyway, guys, as I say, I want this to be somewhat interactive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I've got on the plan so far. And perhaps in the comments, you could tell me whether you've got the thumbs up for all of these, whether you think I've possibly missed something out. And if you've got any other ideas off on a tangent from here on what I can include or what I should not include, because we don't want it to be, a manual that thick where it's easy not to find the good stuff because there's a lot of waffle in there also, then please tell me thoughts, criticisms, everything that you might be able to do. As I say, I'm passionate about producing the best quality book that I can. I'm not saying that's going to be good because I don't know how good I am going to be at writing, but nonetheless, I'm going to do my very best. So here we go. Okay, so the first part of the book, I want to really focus on strikes. Okay, jabs, crosses, hooks, uppercuts. Of course, on top of that, I will also be including details on how to knee and how to kick. Okay, and how to throw elbows also. Now, strictly speaking, obviously this wasn't included necessarily within pugilism. It was certainly in the earlier days, depends which period of time you look at. London prize fighting rules, for example, a little bit more restrictive, but we go back to the origins around the 1700s, anything went, anything at all, okay? But bear in mind, this isn't a pure pugilism book also. This is not just a focus on pugilism in its own right, it's also my personal fighting knowledge also. So there will be a bit of street fighting in there. And of course, I am a trained, very highly regarded sort of an experienced Muay Thai fighter. And so Muay Thai will be introduced into this manual as well to create a complete fighting package, as I say, or learning experience for you guys. On top of that, I have also been studying Glima, and I am in contact with the world's leading Glima practitioner, Lars Oxen. So, I will be including the little fragments of knowledge that I picked up from him. Also regards a Glima aspect to the book. And also, on top of that, I will also be including Pancratian techniques. It's something, again, that I have got some experience in. I have no formal training as such within that, no formal qualifications like a black belt or anything. There isn't no sort of qualifications within that, but what I'm trying to say is I haven't got anything to my name, certificates, regards that, but it's something that I have practiced because I find it to be incredibly effective on the street. Ultimately, Pancratian for me is street fighting, and there's some of the moves that you would never be able to do in a ring, for example, but when you fear for your life, you can do it, and that's why I want to include it, because as I say, I want this to be a training manual, not how to fight in the ring, not how to fight to rules, but how to fight when there are no rules. And that's the whole point of me focusing on pugilism, Muay Thai for the striking aspects, Glima for throws, and also extra clinch manipulation on top of the techniques used in Muay Thai. And as I say, I want to use Parmesan and Pancratian for mostly a focus on dirty moves, okay? Now, as I say, so I want to focus, first of all, opening up with strike theory. That is, describing how to perform the basic strikes, but also going through Mendoza's golden rules, which is something I've covered here before within my Pugilism series, and the importance of strike location within bare knuckle fighting. So in bare knuckle fighting, you don't hit here, for example, and obviously I'll go into detail where you should strike with an open, with a bare fist, a non-glove fist. I will go through that so that you don't break your hand in a real fight, for example. And ultimately, if you remember from my Pugilism series, I described how the fighters within. By the way, that's a series that I will be continuing now. I have the time to be able to commit to it. You remember I described that those guys were having sometimes 3 fights a week, and the only way they could do that is by not breaking their fists. They broke their fists, they'd have to have 2 months out of fighting, and that was the money they used to not only pay for a roof above their head, but also food on the table. Days before welfare, right? So those guys had to look after their fists. And so, as I say, strike location is one of the most important things to learn. It's something I'll be teaching in the book and also on here on YouTube. I will cover basic combinations, punches and bunches. Okay, this is important again for fight techniques, but ultimately the whole ethos to take away from that chapter will be keep it simple. There will not be a much of a contribution in combination work because, well, combos can complicate things unnecessarily. And if you remember, one of the rules within Daniel Mendoza's golden rules is keep it simple. Okay, don't practice something that you're going to forget when the adrenaline is going through your head. Okay, obviously I'll be covering footwork, and the focus on the footwork will be on distance management. Okay, so if you want to box your opponent, how do you keep distance from your opponent? If you want to close in on your opponent, how do you close the distance? And that will be covered in further detail when it comes to infighting. Okay, in a great detail, but this will be a basic introduction at this point. I want to cover haymakers, and when I say that, I want to cover the haymakers of the all-time greats, what they were particularly known for. Okay, so for example, Jack Dempsey's hip punch. Okay, the right cross that Georges Carpentier used to throw. There's a whole host of, we're talking old school 1920s, 1930s fighters and the haymakers they use. How I may even include Mike Tyson in there simply because he is an all-time great and he had one dangerous left hook. I will include some modern fighters, but the primary focus of this will not be modern fighters. It will be sort of 1920s and earlier. Okay, somewhat limited obviously by the lack of footage from that period of time, but there we go. And then I will also be covering in the strike section knockout blows. Okay, when it comes to knockout blows, we're going to be looking at the chin, the cheek, the jaw, just above and the back of the ear, the jugular vein, which is sort of included in that area going down here, and we'll be looking at liver and heart punches. So we're looking at how to knock your opponent out with minimum amount of force required. Then I will progress within the book to strike defense. It's not just learning about how to hurt people, how to knock them out ultimately. It would be how to prevent yourself from getting hurt. Okay, and in quick summary, we're looking at blocks, evades, counters, catches for kicks. Okay, that's a bit of Muay Thai defense there, and also of course within the blocks there will be shin blocks. Okay, for kick defense. We'll be looking at positioning and keeping your opponent off balance. Not only from an offensive point of view, but mostly from a defensive point of view. If your opponent's off balance, they can't hit you hard, okay? It's the body weight behind the punch that gives the power, not the muscle. So if you can keep them off balance, you're pretty safe. You can still get hurt, but you minimize the amount of damage that's coming back at you. And I will be then, within this, at the end of the strike section, so after the offense and defense, I will be doing fighter focuses. This is something I definitely want to do, where I will be focusing on certain key fighters within history. Jack Dempsey, because he's one of my heroes. Georges Carpentier, if I can. It's hard with him because there's not a lot of fight footage for him. Henry Armstrong, he will definitely be covered because he is going to be, his fighting style will be incorporated in the infighting chapter that I intend to do. that brings us nicely actually onto the next part of the book, part 3, which will focus on infighting, as just mentioned. Infighting is all about being within touching distance and engaging in your opponent with strikes. So there's no grappling, there's no clinch at this point. It strikes when you're within touching distance of your opponent. That is, you're basically right next to them. And in fact, part of this will be looking at how to manipulate your opponent for both your maximum angles of attack for yourself, but also for defense, as I say, putting your opponent off balance by using your head into their shoulder and little techniques like that. It's really dangerous stuff. This can really throw a fight when it comes to street fighting, because street fighting is much more close up than it is in a ring, because it's a lot harder to maintain your distance simply because of the environment. Okay, and that's something that I will want to discuss at one point, maybe within the strike section. Jack Dempsey covered it in his championship boxing book about using the environment, because of course he was a bare knuckle fighter before he became a boxer, well actually during the time he was a boxer also. So I'll be including some of his wisdom in that discussion, but that will be a minor sort of point. Because you can never predict your environment. That's the whole point. You can never predict where you're going to fight if you are in the street. Now, I will also be talking within the infighting section about how to engage and initiate the infighting distance, okay, because it is very close. How do you engage someone that close? And of course, we'll be looking at, so for example, the Dempsey step. We'll be looking at the slips and evades and the rolling into the opponent off a slip. We'll be looking, as mentioned before, at controlling your opponent with your head, such as Henry Armstrong, and we'll also be looking at a lot of techniques that Kroos used also, a German fighter. He was incredibly dangerous up close, very famous for his heart and liver punches. We'll be looking, of course, how to initiate certain strikes within that distance, and how to recreate the distance of the strike, how to get out of infighting. If, for example, you're the taller fighter and you want to fight at a distance, okay, from your opponent, say you've got a good jab, how do you recreate the distance that you've lost against an opponent that's closed the distance on you? Okay, so we'll be looking at that also, and also just how to prevent it in general, which will be covering some of Mendoza's fighting techniques, essentially the step punch, well, it's more of a push punch at this point, or push strike as it's sometimes called, and of course then side steps. And then we'll be looking at some Muay Thai techniques such as stamp kicks and front kicks. Right, I am almost there, so I hope I'm not boring you, and I'm hoping I'm not talking too quick. I understand I do go like that when I'm getting excited, but I'm hoping my excitement really shows over here about how passionate and my passion regards where this book's going. So once we've done the infighting, I want to move then on to clinch, grappling and throws. And we're going to start by looking at the chancery, which is a pugilistic clinch. Okay, so in boxing at the moment, within modern day boxing, you go into the clinch. It doesn't take long before the ref breaks it. They don't allow clinch fighting in modern day boxing as such, unless there's progress being made. But even then, they really don't allow it so much these days, which is a real shame, because in theory, it should be still allowed in boxing. There's nothing against the rules as such, apart from when you're resting on your opponent. That's defensive clinching. But when you're talking about aggressive clinch work, you should in theory still be allowed to do it, but it doesn't really happen. It's a shame, because it's my favourite part of the fight, that and infighting. Anyway, we'll be looking at chancery, which is essentially a headlock, and we'll be looking at what we can do with that, such as the cross counter, the change in position for a cross counter, the body counter, and the chancery escape. We'll be looking at different types of chancery also, such as the front chancery, which is the head-in version, the break from front, the front escape, the front prevention, and the bar hold within the front chancery. Okay, a lot of those terms might not make sense at the moment. Of course they will if you buy my book, and of course watch the videos associated with it. Then of course I will move on from front chancery into side chancery. Okay, the side chancery, we'll be looking at how to escape, the side escape. Okay, we'll be looking at how to break it, we'll be looking at how to stop it, and we'll be looking at something called the suit-in chancery, which is a variation of the side. Okay, now once we've done that, I think the next best part to go into, which I think you guys would enjoy, because this is not something that is common knowledge as a whole, and that's the throws and trips in Chancery. So these are the bits that definitely 100% aren't allowed in modern day boxing, okay? But this is what the old boxers, if you wish, the old pugilists used to use, and you could end a fight with some of these moves. Some of them were particularly dangerous, especially the cross buttock throw, okay? As I say, we'll be looking at the check, lead, head, and enter for the throw. So we're looking at sort of entries into the throwing position, but then we'll be focusing on the cross buttock, which is your primary throw from the Chancery within pugilistic fighting. We'll be looking at the lock, which is a way of preventing it from working. Okay, so we're looking at defense against essentially the cross buttock, but then we'll also look at variations of throws, which are again more unusual, even more unusual than the cross buttock. You do see cross buttock being used within a lot of gypsy fights, for example, Irish bare knuckle fighting. You see the Chancery still used quite a bit, but you might not see the back fall, the side fall. The back fall and the side fall. It's my list coming out. I'm struggling here. The hip and shoulder throw, the chip, back, and of course back heeling, which is the last type of throw which we'll be going over. That is the last of the clean throws. We will also be, of course, looking at hair pulling, regards assistance, balance breaks. Okay, essentially making your opponent fall over by using their hair as a weapon against them. Okay, pulling hair is not just for girls, guys. It's for guys as well. When you know how to do it, oh, you know what, beards as well. They come in handy to grab onto. Okay, all right, that's why I tie it up. Anyway, once we've done all that, that's going to be probably the most detailed area alongside the clinch. Okay, so when we look at the clinch, we'll be looking, which is not the Chancery, this is different. This is where essentially aiming to get two hands on your opponent around the back of the head or around the neck, okay, but not with the elbow, just with the hands, okay? And we'll be looking and focusing primarily on the clinch at both Muay Thai and Grima, but mostly Muay Thai. So we're going to be looking at how to progress the hands to the center of the head, the different tricks of the trade you can do, certain defenses for when you're screwed, if for want of a better another word. When you're struggling, how did you just essentially do a lock on it so that you can't be taken down and knee to the head or elbow to the back of the head? Okay. I do want to include also in the book, possibly, you tell me guys if you want to or not. Everyone kind of goes, no, I won't bother with it. But I have a fascination for sumo, and I want to include in this part here, because I think it's quite appropriate, sumo holds and throws, okay? Sumo wrestlers, they know how to get you on the floor, and I'm not going to be focusing on sumo extensively because a lot of it isn't appropriate for a street fight, and also I don't have the skill to do it. But some of them are actually quite simple, quite easy to remember. As I say in the Mendoza rule, keep it simple. That's what something that I want to do. Use some of the simplest sumo moves just as an extra string to the bow. You tell me, guys, is that something you would want to know? Okay. After that, again, this would be a very detailed section. We're getting to the last part now, guys. This is the last section of the book, beyond history and stuff, but regards to the actual training manual itself. And that is in play. Okay, in play is the kind of things you can do up close and personal that aren't throws, they aren't trips, they aren't punches or strikes. These are the dirty things, the real dirty, nasty moves you can use that are totally 100% illegal in any sporting environment, but will make a difference in a real fight. So we're going to be looking at the pinion, both the elbow assisted and the arm wrap pinion. We're going to be looking at the boxing choke, which is it's a different type of choke to, for example, just throttling them, okay, which is not a very great move to do on someone, but the boxing choke can be incredibly deadly and quite easy to do. You don't have to be that powerful to put it on. And it's a lot harder to counter also, because I will be going over in this bit in play defense against being throttled, for example, which is a pancratian move or defense that I use. I've actually used it in real life as well, and it's completely obliterates your opponent. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So we'll be covering the boxing choke as well as the normal choke, but defenses against the normal choke, not how to employ the normal choke. Okay, we'll be looking at the elbow. We'll be looking at how to break the boxing choke. As I say, it's a little bit harder to break, but we're looking at how to do it with the elbow strike. Okay, we'll be looking at head twists, rakes, gouges, ear slaps and pulls, nostril pulls, and hair pulls. and then we'll be, you know, covering a little bit extra on top of that, which is mostly pometron pancreatian. More details to come. So anyway, guys, that's the sort of brief, I wouldn't say brief, it's 24 minutes, but that is, as you can see, what I'm trying to cover in this book, and you can see why I've got lost. As I say, can't see the wood through the trees. You can see why I've got lost in it, because I've just tried to do it literally, page 1, then page 2, page 3, with no real plan of where to go. So in my head, a good idea of what I want to achieve, nothing on paper, but now I've kind of gone through it all. As you can see, I've put it on a digital form. I've got reference to it. I know what books I'm going to be putting in there, you know, quotes from books that I'll be putting in there. I've acquired the books. Some real antiques. I managed to get one. You know, a lot of them are written in the 1800s and 1900s, and I've got original copies of them. I am so lucky to have some of those. They are such wonderful books. And I know the pages to go to. I've read them all. I've got know the pages to go to regards to getting the information onto paper, because as I say, a lot of these techniques, they're not really taught anymore, so you've got to go to the original sources. Of course, they're all dead, so what is left behind is their literature. Okay, but none of the stuff, all the stuff that I'll be including in the book and on my training videos are things that I am able to perform myself, that I am able to be put into practice. So I will not be including anything that either I don't understand or simply is just not practical, at least in the modern day setting. Okay, for example, I'm not going to be teaching you how to fence with a sword, which is what a lot of the old manuals teach. Also, how to fight with knives, how to fight with swords. Knife fighting is particularly useful, especially if you're in the UK, but I don't want to teach it for obvious reasons. Okay, we fight with these days. Okay, if you can't fight with these, if you need a knife, well, you're a pussy and you don't deserve to learn how to fight properly. Just my opinion. Okay, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you now. Please, if you can, leave comments. Anything whatsoever, even if it's a criticism, I need to hear it. I need to know whether I'm barking up the wrong tree, whether this is a good idea or not, because it's going to take a long time to do. I promise you guys, I will be going at this as much as I can, but obviously it takes a long time to write a book. I don't have a huge amount of time around me, because even though but basically, you know, life, right? Life's got a lot of things expected of you, and I'm getting married very soon, in just over 12 months' time. So obviously I've got preparations for that, and during that time it's going to be hectic anyway. So bear with me. I'm hoping to get it within the next sort of 24 months, maybe sooner, probably a little bit longer, but I will work at it, guys. The longer it takes anyways, it gives me more opportunity to do more videos. You're not going to be left alone. I promise you, promise you, promise you. And if I don't produce videos at a reasonable rate, hound me, remind me to keep this up, because it's going to be hard work, but I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. I don't know how the book will be available initially. My plan is to put it onto Amazon, okay, as a digital download. But if I can afford to do it, and if I can get publishers interested, I will try to do hard copies as well. But that will probably be a very limited run if I do go down that line, unless it's, of course, very successful, because basically can't afford to lose any money on this, okay? So, but it'd be nice to create an income at the same time. Anyway, guys, when it is available and any details as things going on, I will keep in touch with you regards how the book writing's going. Then I will let you know on here. I will let you know where to buy the book. I will probably, if I do get hard copies, we'll have a couple of free copies to give away on here to some of our subscribers. But this is all pie in the sky at the moment, okay? I do like to look after you guys for supporting me in return. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I will see you soon. As I say, comment and like and subscribe to my channel, please. Check out my other training content. I am a powerlifter, okay? I started off as a boxer, but I'm a powerlifter these days. I'm a retired boxer. I'm a retired gentleman boxer. Guys, I'm going to shut up. Love you and leave you. Bye-bye.